Hello, welcome to Art Tale, a podcast by CalArts students and a place for artists to connect. I'm Sally, a BFA2 character animation student and a co-founder of Art Tale. And hosting with me today, we have Charlotte from Art Tale and also 3 other amazing guest hosts from the character animation program. So introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Charlotte Song and I'm a BFA2 experimental animator. I love hand-drawn animation, period.
Right. Hi, I'm Giovanni. I am a BFA2 in character animation, and I am very interested in 2D animation. I love 2D animation.
Yeah, and Kabir.
Hi, I'm Kabir. I'm also a BFA2 in the character animation program, and I'm super into hand-drawn animation as well.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Shannon, or QWorks. I'm a BFA1, and I'm also into hand-drawn animation.
Woo! And we are super excited for Mr. James Baxter to be here today. Thank you for coming.
I'm James. I'm an animator for 38 years, and I'm super into hand-drawn animation.
Yay! Woo! Thank you so much for coming. We are in awe of your work, and we're super excited for this conversation. We're going to dive into topics like learning animation and also tackling animation challenges, or even just being a hand-drawn animator. But before that, I wanted to ask a question about what inspired you to go into animation? What excites you about animation?
Wow. So let's see. I guess when I was a teenager, I started getting really interested in film. Mm-hmm. Primarily, and it was during the 80s, so I was 10 years old in 1977. That's when Star Wars came out, the first one. So that was kind of like sparked my interest in like film and like wanting to know how they did that, and so I spent a lot of my teenage years being really into not only drawing, because I was drawing since I was a kid, but visual effects and filmmaking and stuff like that. And so I think when I spent a lot of my teenage years either sort of experimenting with the visual effects stuff or doing drawing, but I think I first tried doing some animation when I was about 15 or 16 with like a Super 8 film camera on a tripod with a little thing and some paper, shooting it on the floor.
That's amazing.
You couldn't see what you were doing, you just had to kind of like cross your fingers and hope it was going to come out. So yeah, I think that was my first try at it, and I had seen also some documentaries on TV about Richard Williams and what he was doing on The Thief, and that was in London, which was really close by, because I grew up in the UK. And that kind of spurred me like, yeah, this is really cool, I want to try doing this.
That's amazing,
yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Would you say if there's someone who really inspired you in animation?
Initially, I think it was probably Dick. It was probably Dick Williams. Just because I'd seen his stuff on TV and the commercials that he had done on TV. But I'd seen Disney movies when I was little, and that fascinated me too, and Bugs Bunny and all that stuff, like everyone else. But I think it was the work that was coming out of his studio, the artistry behind it, the finesse behind it, the willingness to work in other styles kind of blew me away, and I felt like they were sort of just pushing the boundaries of what you could do in hand-drawn. So that really kind of fascinated me.
Yeah. Also, now we're jumping into like kind of the animation learning process and questions. My first question would be, if you were to craft a animation syllabus to a new beginner animator, or like just animators in all level, I wonder what would be some of the main things that you would teach and incorporate into it, and how would you prioritize them?
I think I would definitely teach first and foremost the ability to communicate with drawings.
Like how
we're talking about hand-drawn animation, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the ability to communicate ideas with drawings, that's the number one thing you have to be able to do in animation, hand-drawn animation, is that the audience has to get it, basically. So that's about posing, it's about staging, it's about presenting ideas clearly to an audience, it's being able to draw well enough to communicate your ideas to an audience. It doesn't matter what style you're working in, it doesn't matter how slick or fancy it is at the beginning. Really the only way for an animator to fail is to fail to communicate. Right? Everything else is up for grabs. Everything. Like style, how you can do something intentionally grotesque and weird and like whatever, but as long as your intention is communicated to your audience, that's the only thing that really, really matters, and the only thing that if you don't do it, you've kind of failed.
Then how do you like learn how to communicate your intent properly if that's something like you have to focus on?
Yeah, so it's a combination of I think working on your drawing skills, not just in your own particular style, but academically as well. You know, things like life drawing and stuff like that is always good to have. So working on your academic drawing skills, but also noticing in great art that you like, you know, whether it's Klimt or Michelangelo or whatever, or whatever inspires you, what they're actually doing to present their ideas to you. I actually look at a lot of mid-century illustration, especially like advertisement illustration from like the 50s and 60s and stuff like that. That's a gold mine for being able to communicate to an audience an idea through a drawing or a painting. Almost more so than fine art, because the only goal in that is to communicate a feeling when they're doing advertising. You know, if you look at like Robert Fawcett's work or something like that from the 40s and 50s, like his way of like how he's posing characters, what he's doing with like to make poses more meaningful and extreme, to create an emotion. It's like, so when you look at it, you know what that character's feeling. Yeah.
I think, honestly, like, sorry, I'm like going on a tangent here, but I think definitely illustration as opposed to animation, I think it has its own challenges because you're trying to capture like a single moment in a single like shot. So you have to, so I feel like it's like you have to think like really hard about like how to like kind of communicate the idea to the audience, like you said. So I don't know. I think
animation,
it's interesting.
yeah, it's different than illustration in that.
Yeah, because it's moving.
It's
right?
a temporal.
Yeah.
Like music. It only exists in time. Whereas illustration is a it's a plastic art like sculpture. It just sits there and you go all the time in the world to look at it. So it's even more incumbent on the artist to like be able to get down to the essence of what you're trying to say quickly, because it's going to be gone in a flash.
Is there anything you wish you could like tell your like 20, 21-year-old self, like, oh, this is what I wish I had worked on at that time when you're like starting out in animation on films?
Yeah, probably this thing. I think I was probably too caught up with the just the art of moving things around, because I think it was the thing I got the quickest, like I understood the quickest. In learning animation was just the whole how do you space things to make them move a certain way. Yeah, that technical part of it I grasped rather quickly. So I think that's kind of where I veered off to, or at least the thing I worked on a lot. In my curriculum, in my imaginary curriculum, yes, the first thing would be like working on posing and how to communicate ideas through drawing and stuff like that. But very quickly afterwards would be like, well, then how do those drawings relate to each other through movement? And how do you plan a shot so that those poses or those moments, that art of communication is going to be there, but it's also going to move really well. And so that's backing into the more sort of technical side of animation, like how does weight and balance work? How does spacing work? How do all those more technical parts of it work? Because like one of those arts which requires a lot of different skills, to bring to bear, like a ballet or opera or something like that, you have to have a certain baseline level of skill to pull it off. So like a dancer working at the bar doing their pliés, or like a musician practicing their scales, there's something to be said about practicing your craft on a technical level, so that when you come to that moment when you actually have to express yourself, you have the tools to do it. Like a dancer or a musician. It's like they practice a lot so that when they get on stage, they've got it in their fingers enough that they can then forget all that and go like, what am I feeling? And how do I express myself?
So you have to have like the necessary draftsmanship to communicate an idea?
Yeah, I mean, only in as far as the style you want to do something in, obviously. I mean, I've worked in like, you know, this sort of Disney movies and stuff, which requires a lot of drawing skill to pull off something that looks sculptural, that looks, you know, dimensional, moves believably, whatever that means. But not all styles of animation require that. You just have to be able to execute within the style that you're working at to a high enough level that you can communicate.
Yeah.
You know.
What I hear is having this intention or mindset of connecting your feelings toward the drawing, and that's in the style or whatever way, but you have to clearly realize that whatever you draw has an intention behind it, and it's trying to express either speed or weight, characteristic, emotion, or whatever.
Yeah. That's why it's best to, like, when you're doing character design, to draw them doing things from the story.
I love character design.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, you can draw them just standing there going, hey, but it's much better to draw them doing something in the story, whether it's relating to another character or what they're going to actually have to do in the film. Yeah. Because if you draw them in situ, in, like, the design, or the story kind of tells you what the design needs to be to do the thing it needs to do in the movie, right? Whether it's like look imposing or feel small or whatever, you know, you're thinking about it, character design as much from a story standpoint as from just a shape language standpoint is always a good idea.
I'm curious to know what is kind of, you know, when you see a drawing that you feel like really communicates an idea very well, what are some things that you know, think about, or some things that you feel make a very clear, well-communicated drawing? What do you think are some things that you should be thinking about when you're trying to communicate an idea? I hope that's not too broad.
Yeah, no, I think about it in two ways, and it's, I think, from the number of actors I've talked to, it's very similar to what they go through.
Yeah.
In that you're trying to do something really internal and honest, but at the same time there's an audience over there.
Yeah.
Like, how do I present this to that so they get it?
So they get it.
Right, so there's a bit of a double trick going on. So I think about, like, well, is this pose communicating that idea from this angle well enough? You know, if I'm, you know, doing a gesture or like the gesture itself comes out of just the internal feeling of it, right? But then there's this moment where you go like, okay, well, that's how I feel and what I want to do. Well, how is it best to present that to someone sitting over there? Shall I move this around? Shall I do this? Shall I straighten that? Shall I now arrange things so that it feels the strongest version of this feeling, but so that that person can understand
They
it?
get it.
Yeah.
No, that's
so
good.
so it's a dual kind of way of thinking. But the first thought is the feeling. What do I want to convey?
Yeah.
And what does that mean in terms of the pose and the body?
Yeah. What's the story? What are the characters thinking?
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's also very important to know who the character really is.
They really are.
Yeah, because as a character animator, you find yourself having to be all sorts of different people, much like an actor has to be too, or probably even more so than a real actor has to be, because I've had to be mermaids and mice and horses and all sorts of things that a live action actor wouldn't have to contend with. Right? So my breadth of skill trying to be somebody else kind of has to be a little broader, I think.
Beauty and beat at the same time.
Yeah. So doing like serious character animation, like it character animation runs the gamut, right? It just goes all the way from something that's very silly, and you can you don't really have to get into the character to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just characters jumping around, being silly, and like you're just trying to like create drawings which are funny and communicate those ideas to an audience, but you're not necessarily having to dig really deep inside yourself to find those things.
Yeah.
You're more like a puppeteer from the outside going, oh, this is going to be funny. I'll make them do this. It'll be good. And actors do that too.
Yeah.
But there's going to be moments where you have to really get inside the character to do something honest.
Yeah.
If it's a more serious piece, if it's got real emotion behind it, if the character's like grieving or something like really like heavy.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's the part where you have to know who they are, how they're different from you, how they might do something that might be different than how you might do it. And that's very much like what a live action actor has to do in preparing to do a character.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's also like when you're digging into a character that's so far removed from yourself, I feel like it's like, how do you really dig into really trying to figure out who this character might be?
Yeah.
You know, or like how can you really step into their shoes in a way that will allow you to express them in the most authentic way.
Yeah.
But you know, since they're so different than yourself, it's like I
Well,
feel like it's
you
so,
know, you look at a lot
yeah.
of people around you. But mostly I try and examine like what the world has done to them, how they look at the world, how they view their world around them.
Yeah.
Do they feel like an underdog? Do they feel like I've got this? What's
Yeah.
their baseline sort of a relationship with the world around them?
Yeah.
And secondly, what has that done to their body?
Is that done to their body?
Yeah, in terms of how they
intense.
hold themselves. How do they hold their bodies? Do they spend the whole time doing this, looking out, or do they spend the whole time doing this,
Yeah.
where they're like
Yeah.
living up in here and they're kind of neurotic, and, and the movements are like more staccato and quicker, and they've got a broomstick up there, because you know, and they live all up in here, and it makes you move like this, or are they like? Yeah, they just like generally, do they live down in here? and they're just like, yeah, man, this is cool, whatever, you know.
It's like
How do they relate to their world? And what does it do to their posture?
their posture and their like little actions. And
Yeah, so
movements and
you,
stuff.
you develop
Yeah.
sort of a default posture for the character. Rafiki's default posture is high elbows, arched back, because he's not actually that used to being on two legs. Whenever he gets up on two legs, it's like, it's a thing. So his normal two-legged bipedal posture is like, you know, he's kind of goofy and funny, but he's got this definite, whenever I would draw him, I would
you have to act it out. You have to
I would just do this, right? Like hands in, elbows high, arch back,
Oh, we all have to do it.
you know, right? And that's, everything starts from here,
Yeah.
right? And then Quasimodo's is like this crazy, you know.
He's like bending down.
You know,
yeah.
But yeah, everything sort of starts from that default posture. You know,
Gosh,
so
yeah.
they're not. It's especially
Yeah.
tricky in CG. You know, we don't talk much about CG here. But you know, when you do a CG model, you know, everything has to be completely neutral. You know, the character has to be like completely
the
devoid. Completely devoid of any emotion when you start, and you have to spend some time to get it into an emotional posture.
I know you
yeah.
emphasized a little bit life drawing earlier on. Do you still find yourself going life drawing?
No, I should. No, I should. I don't, but I should. So do.
What do you focus on in
that
kind of study?
Whenever I have an assignment that requires me to do anatomy, I always have to take a bit of a personal refresher course, and I get out the books and I do some sketching and stuff just to kind of get back into it. Yeah, because you know, anatomy is hard.
Yeah.
All right. I would love to check out this clip. Speaking of Rafiki, this clip from The Lion King. You posted this on YouTube where you showed like the process from your rough to tie down.
Right. That's Ruben Aquino.
Yeah.
That did Simba. So this is my first rough
Yeah.
Oh.
of doing Rafiki. So this is me, and that's the tie down, right?
It's
a
beautiful.
crazy
man.
So the process for me goes from emotional to technical, right? And the beginning part, the very first moments that I'm doing when I'm Ruben did his animation first, and I knew kind of where Rafiki had to be, and it really is like, okay, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Fortunately, it's a well thought out story, and it had a specific thing, and I knew that he had to run up beside him and basically get out round in front of him and kind of stop him for the next shot. But that's it, right? So the process is like, okay, so what do I want to actually do here that would be charming, fun, communicate the idea that he's being playful.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of, I think, basically finding that sort of last pose.
I think you can.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Slides out.
Is getting, this is the thing there. Let's get back here.
I'll stand up.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So it's
Gather
a combination
around.
of finding, and this pose is obviously thought out with the next shot in mind. So these two shots are thought out together, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So this is actually probably the first drawing I did on the shot.
Oh.
Yeah, didn't start at the beginning. Just start where the most important piece, and then work up to it. So in this case, it's right at the end of the shot. So I think this is probably the first thing I did where I'm trying to, okay, well, I need to draw him with his head flipped upside down because he's gonna do that in the next scene, right? And then how do I create a nice pose that's clear for the audience and get the stick and the arm straight and have this one. I'm just arranging parts of his body, like you're doing gesture drawing to communicate this kind of crazy idea, right? Then probably I think going back to the preparation for that, so this moment, coming in here. So what's a good preparation to get into
that next
with this arm under here?
doing.
Well, probably let's open it up so I go do that.
Yeah.
So it's me just thinking out the action, how that's going to feel, and then the run up is a little bit more of a mechanical exercise. Like, okay, well, I got to do a baboon run, but I want to do a little. I had the idea that I wanted to do a little kind of skip in the middle to make it fun, right? So it's not just like a baboon. So I wanted to go like run, and then like a little jump onto two legs, kind of thing. So this part is like me. That's why these drawings are very much just circles and shapes.
So
And head I'm just indicating the head angle. That's usually very important for me when I'm doing this first pass, is just to indicate what angle the head is at. I don't go into like a lot of detail, like the expression. I don't care. I know what I want it to be eventually, but at this stage I don't care what the expression is.
So
It'll come later. But I do
That's
care what the
great.
body language is and the attitude is. So it's
Mm-hmm.
important to me to know if I'm doing this or if I'm doing this. Because there's a difference, right? So I do indicate the eye line. But apart from that, it's just me going through this sort of in a slightly more mechanical way. So this is like a standard baboon run. Back legs going onto front legs, 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, 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 like a standard sort of gallop. But then I wanted him to kind of curl up into this, do this like thing in here, where he just does it on his hind feet right here, right, instead of putting his hands down here. So I wanted like a full quadrupedal gallop, then into a little jaunty skip, bipedal skip, and then getting into the final pose. So the first half of the shot's more mechanical, but I'm still thinking emotionally playful. So I'm concentrating on where the ups and downs are, what the rhythm is, which foot goes where, how much ground I have to cover, all that crap. But ultimately working into that last pose is what I'm trying to do.
So you work very
Very fast.
Very fast.
Yeah.
It's very pose
take
to
about half
pose
an
as
hour.
well.
Oh,
Half an
wow.
hour.
To do all those drawings.
It's like, no, I mean, I'm like putting
Half
paper
an
down,
hour.
I'm doing this, like, nope.
Oh my gosh.
I want to, maybe an hour. but I'm putting it.
Maybe an hour.
No, but I'm doing it as quickly as I can so I can feel
So you can
spontaneous.
just feel the pose. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't want to get bogged down in
The mechanics.
any of it. I want to feel fresh.
Yeah.
And I can feel that later on in the week when I'm tying it down, and it's just.
Yeah.
But to do the initial run through, the initial plan, I want to go as fast as I can with as fewer drawings as I can get away with.
Few drawings.
So like as many drawings as it takes to sell the action, but as few as I can get away with. Right. So this is
good. Yeah.
This is on 4s and a couple of 2s, I think, but it's mostly like on 4s and 6s and stuff like that, and 12s at the end. I think.
That's amazing.
So that's me just like whatever it takes to when I shoot it to understand if it's going to work, but not any more than that.
Yeah, and I guess this is
That's
back,
awesome.
back when you had to spend a whole bunch of time capturing it to see what it looked like. So there was no like.
Yeah,
don't
because
waste a bunch of time.
I couldn't see this move while I was drawing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I had to actually go and take half an hour and shoot it, under a video camera.
Yeah.
To do this, so it actually trains you quite well to understand what motion feels like to not play something when you're animating it.
So just
On a nice relaxing moment, you should try it. Like, try animating something from start to finish and never press play.
never press play.
Yeah.
That's
It's like
I do it all the time because I work on like ink and paper and.
Because on paper you can't shoot it.
I have to draw like 1,000 frames and then shoot it at one time, and then every time it's like, what's gonna look like?
There's like this.
Yeah.
But the thing it does do for you is it does teach you pretty quickly what a 24th of a second really feels like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, especially like in the digital age where it's like,
Yeah, because you can play at any
Instant
moment. It's like
playback,
fine. It's like,
you
does
know.
that work? Nah. Do it
And
again.
then
Does that work? Nah.
Yeah,
And you actually end up animating a little bit more by trial and error. That way.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. Yeah,
Instead of actually planning and visualizing and executing and then does that work? You know?
I think definitely with paper, it's a lot more deliberate. I don't know if it's because of the tactile thing where you have like the sheet of paper in front of you and the pencil, but I feel like, I don't know, I feel like especially because you can't press play and especially because it's on paper and it feels like more permanent. I just feel like, I don't know, it feels a lot more deliberate in my head, and I feel like I think it's definitely probably better for learning animation if it wasn't like more like low.
I mean, they're both good.
But yeah.
I think they're both good. I think drawing digitally is good. You know, you've got a lot of freedom. You can. There's a lot of ways for you to adjust things, which is good. But it can be a crutch.
Yeah. I definitely understand.
For actually learning how to animate really effectively.
Yeah.
Because you're not guessing.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be a good practice for like students to more kind of start with paper and pencil, just to kind of get those good habits in early, so that translates to digital?
Whether it's paper or pencil, or just having an exercise where you are not allowed to press play.
Okay.
One of those.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that when I was doing my first paper animation is straight ahead, and I have to really connect to the feelings that I want to express with every single thing I draw, and then these feelings are kind of the play. Like I have to see if this feeling is consistent with my last frame, and then because I use Lightbox, and how like the space between each line, how do they expressing the feeling I have. But I've been trying digital animation now, but when I draw digitally, I feel like I'm more being aware of the looks of things, like how it looks on the screen instead of how I feel on the page.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I feel like starting out working straight ahead is a good thing to try and do, but sort of rather quickly you come across the problems with working completely straight ahead, which is it's very hard to control things, right? And you kind of go off in weird places, and it goes into weird things that you didn't intend. So, but also the opposite of that, working completely pose to pose, can also make it stiff. Right?
Yeah.
How do you find like a balance?
Yeah, so the more you do it, just the more animation you do, the more you're actually able to visualize what the animation is going to do between these poses. So when I'm posing a character now, I'm thinking of the drawing that I'm doing, but I'm actually also thinking of all the others. that are going to be there.
Stuff
And
like
if I'm thinking, oh, if I put that here, then as I come into it, that arm would probably be better if it's there because I'm going to, I'm ahead. I'm already ahead. I'm already ahead at the next stage of animating. So it actually helps me put the elements of those key drawings in the right place because I'm already kind of doing the other drawings in my mind a little bit. So it's a combination of I'm working pose to pose, but I'm also kind of straight aheading it in my head while I'm doing it.
I was so curious to ask about that because I feel like a lot of motion here feels like there's a lot that could be, pose to pose, but then feels like a lot of, stuff that, you really could only kind of think about when you're doing it straight ahead. Like a lot of, sorry, I'm not
So,
sure.
and sometimes
Yeah.
those things I don't think about, and they do present themselves later, and I incorporate them. But I try. This only works if you've been doing it a little while, right?
Yeah.
If you've been like, and you have a bit more experience of what's going to work, what's not going to work. But yeah, that's essentially what I'm doing here is working pose to pose, but kind of straight ahead in my head a little bit while I'm doing it. I don't know if that makes any sense at all.
No,
No, it definitely does. It definitely does. Yeah. Thank you.
yeah.
And then the tie down of this, that is the rest of the week or 2 weeks or whatever, however long it took, because tying down takes a lot longer, because then the drawings have to be really,
That's the now
Yeah.
be on model, but keep the
get a
energy.
model, track everything, make it
Yeah.
solid.
Yeah. Then
But interestingly, I'll usually end up doing it in a similar order. Yeah, I found that,
You'd start with the end pose.
Yeah, I'll start with that end pose, and I'll go back and I'll do those ups and downs
Right.
on thing. But now that I have that a rough plan, I know even more precisely what's going to happen
Right.
in between. I might do things like leave off some bits of hair, or like those little gourds that swing around his staff, or maybe I'll end up adjusting his tail, because those elements really are better done truly straight ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, elements
yeah.
of follow through are usually better done completely straight ahead. Unless you've been doing it so long, you can take a good guess at where they're going to end up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of, I guess, caveats into the next question we had. And the clip kind of I wanted to ask was this clip from Hunchback of Notre Dame with Quasimodo carrying Esmeralda for sanctuary.
This bonkers thing.
Should I play?
Just
Yeah. Beautiful scene.
Okay,
mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a bit zoomed in.
sorry. Let me
Oh shoot. Yeah.
let me restart because we need to watch this properly. Okay.
Just marinated it.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah,
I'm
unfortunately, I didn't get to keep any of my rough sketches for this. Or I don't have a test of it.
I'm just like, how
So
is
gorgeous.
that even
I guess the question I
Yeah.
had is like, I feel like you're very well known for your really complex moving camera and very,
Right.
those really like, those money shots in these films. But I want to know, like, for me, looking at this, I'm like, there's just so many things happening even besides the camera, and I guess I want to know your process of planning that out, because you're getting his character, you're getting the feeling of the wind, you're getting, even like the dress and his kind of cloak, when you're thinking about doing a really hard shot like this, where there's not just 3 elements, there's 6, 7, 8 elements that you have to keep track of. What's your, I guess, process of approaching a scene like that?
For this shot, I think, like most of these kind of scenes, I tended to pick the moment or moments that I wanted to highlight and work on those poses and those drawings first. So for this shot, right, really what I wanted to try and do was orchestrate the choreography of him climbing up the thing at the beginning,
Right.
really so that I could get to this, right here. I wanted that. I wanted to have you be able to see his face in a little window underneath her body. That this was like initial drawing, I think, that I started with this scene. But I did have a little bit of an idea of like, well, how am I going to get him up there? But initially, this was the moment. Because timing of the shot, he couldn't just go all the way up there. He needed to pause.
Right.
Just because I was looking at the camera move a lot and going like, if he goes up there, then he's like, no, he should just wait. He needs to wait before he jumps over, because look at how slow this camera's going. If I jump him too early, he's going to be just hanging out over here for too long. So that what would be cool? I'm going to have an aggressive look back down at the crowd moment for him in here. So it really is this drawing, this moment, that the first half of the shot is based around. So working on that pose, I think initially, and the hardest thing to do with any of these shots where the camera's moving is to stand still.
Yeah.
Because then you're locked into the sculpture of the environment. You can kind of get away with murder when you're running around a little bit, but if you stand still, it's like, nope, you're there, and you got to look like you're really there.
Yeah.
So it was me working between this drawing and when he stops doing they're around here somewhere. So it's only like 12 frames or maybe longer, 16 frames or so. But it is just this. How do I got to make sure I keep him looking solid and his feet are planted and he's turning correctly. I remember changing her pose quite a bit in here because of how she was getting flung around. I initially had her hips facing us when I first drew it, and I hadn't figured it out yet. But then because they are kind of facing us here, her hips are facing us here. And then but then she rocks over, as the camera moves by her. So I had to change. I hadn't gotten very far yet, but I do remember actually having to change that pose so she was facing away from you. But I still wanted to see her face. So I'm like, how can I Renaissance sculpture her, into this position, right?
Yeah.
And I also made sure that I kept her arm, as she rocked over, I kept her arm on top of her body so it wouldn't come down. It comes down when he jumps. Yeah, it goes flop.
Was it like another like key moment you were thinking of, or was it just like for?
Obviously, the second half of the shot is about the sanctuary moment, right? So, like when does this happen, right? And there was a version of the background that had like sort of a pepper pot, or no, like kind of like a potato, a CG potato that just kind of sat there, and a CG sleeping bag, or a burrito, whatever, like, that was just hovering up here. So I had some kind of size reference, but it didn't move. It was just standing there, right, in situ. So it gave me at least some anchor points to like know kind of how big they should be. You don't see that in this test. But yeah, they were kind enough to give me that, at least for the final, where he was going to be standing.
Yeah, because something like that is just like...
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I'd be able to do that well without that help.
Yeah.
CG
One
potato.
frame is off.
Oh, like one frame is off, it's like...
Yeah.
But the good thing about computer camera moves is they're very predictable. They're unlike live action ones, which usually are a bit more unpredictable. Like the stuff we were doing in Roger Rabbit was harder to do than this. Because those moves are live action and they tend to be a bit more random. They're very predictable. So if you can get your keys in the right place, and you can do really good spacing in between them so they come arcing around, and they, you can usually predict where the computer's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to be like so crazy. If your stuff is spacing well, and you understand what's happening in the camera move, then yeah. But it takes a lot of. It's just those key poses take a lot of time to do because you're constantly trying to refer back to the architecture, and I would even do things like extend bits of the architecture so that I could lock him in position. Like, yeah, in here, I was looking at this vertical here and where his arm goes across it. right here, this vertical
Oh, do you?
right there. And so I would make sure that I had his arm always coming into contact with the top of the balcony there
Yeah.
at that point. You know, so you know, constantly referring back and forth to those things.
Yeah, yeah.
Why is the ink not showing?
Oh, you need to. I think you need to like make a new layer on TV Paint, and then you can.
Yeah,
draw
yeah,
on
yeah.
it.
It's gonna,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
want to actually draw on it. I was just kind of showing you with my cursor. Um,
Yeah.
But so it's a combination of animating traditionally, where you are, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to do this thing. Then you have to anticipate, and then you've got to jump, and
Yeah, yeah.
just as you would, like as if it was a held camera. But then you've got the added sort of weirdness of how this is going to look from this angle and then that angle, and then you
Yeah.
have to also, unlike a regular shot where you can shoot a test and then you can maybe change your timing or something. You can't do
Yeah.
that here.
Oh no.
Yeah, you kind of have to
You have-
commit
Yeah.
and go like, all right, that's
Like,
frame
that's what
57,
it is,
and
that's
it's not
right.
moving.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So
Wow.
You could say, oh no, it's not working at frame 57. It needs to be on 61. Fine, but you're gonna have to redraw the whole thing because it's now not here. It's there. So now you've got
Yeah.
to draw it differently. So it does take a bit more planning and
Yeah.
thought. It's mostly in the planning on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More than anything.
Have you ever had that issue where you had to like redraw like so much?
Yeah, no,
Because-
but because I would sort out the timing of it rough, pretty scribbly, pretty quickly,
Yeah, yeah.
And just like the Rafiki shot, I would go through this shot and do, 10, 12 poses and shoot them. You couldn't quite tell if it was really matching the background, but at least I could
Yeah.
tell for timing, for the just timing of the shot, if it was going to work, and then I would flesh those out a little bit and try and get a bit
Yeah.
more sculptural with that drawing. Do a few more drawings in between those. Take it back to the thing when I had about 20, 30 drawings into it,
Yeah, yeah.
and then go like, yeah, okay. And now I could actually
Now-
start doing a drawing where I felt like
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna have to waste a lot of time if I had to redraw it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome.
stuff. Like,
So,
But these,
yeah.
these are hard shots to do, that's for sure. I don't recommend it.
So I guess then on the flip side, like as opposed to like stuff that was like very kind of like semi-realistic characters, very like kind of like this complex movements. I want to talk about maybe like doing something like I guess like the like stuff like your newer animation like for TV, like kind of Steven Universe or Wolfwalkers or even like Here Adventure Time. How do you like when you're animating stuff like this that's like so simple and like so graphic and exists in like such like an abstract universe? How do you still like kind of have that sense of like believability? Because I'm looking at this like I looked at like the James Baxter horse and I'm like seeing him like roll around in like this little like bouncing ball and he like shakes his head when he whinnies and it feels so
Right.
real. And you have the shot where he like neatly folds up that little hat and he gallops off into the background and he's like a noodle on 4 legs, but it feels like a horse.
He is
And, like-
kind of like strangely like a little snowman with legs, isn't he? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
But like it still feels like so real, and even when he's like folding up this hat, it's like kind of just like it's a very like abstract movement. He like does this and this and then suddenly boom, it's a hat. But it all just like I believe it. I believe the James Baxter horse is like deflating this bouncing ball and bouncing off into the sunset as like a little snowman on 4 legs.
Yeah.
And like I guess how do you approach stuff like that where it's like so like abstract and like so graphic? How do you kind of how do you make it feel real? If that makes sense.
I think by animating it in a very similar way and just drawing it differently, frankly. I mean, there's some cheats going on here, right? With like how that hat folds up.
Yeah, but then how do you
yeah.
like approach that and still make it feel like still get the audience to like believe it?
Well,
I guess.
I would do like the final drawing of the hat folded up, right there.
And you work backwards?
Yeah,
Or?
and then I would like, okay, that's where I've got to get to. This is the ball as just deflated by itself. How do I get from that to that and look believable? And I knew I just basically wanted to fold. But then it's really just like, how do I cheat those color shapes so that they're going to just sort of magically do that across a few frames, and you're not going to you're not going to see the sleight of hand.
Yeah.
But putting enough animation technique into it so that you feel things like the subtle squash and stretch that happens when he tucks his hoof into it.
Yeah.
When he pokes his hoof, the whole hat goes You know, so
Yeah.
layering that technique on top of that sort of sleight of hand, I think, is what I do. I have asked on these occasions, like especially on Steven Universe, where I asked Rebecca, do you want me to try and fit in with the style of the show, like more, or
Yeah.
do you want me to just do my thing? She said, no, I want you to do your thing. So it's not really going to match the rest of the show because it's going to be more fluid, it's going to be more elaborate.
But it's a
right?
money shot. I remember that like.
And she said, no, that's what I want
yeah.
you to do.
Yeah.
All right.
It's so
Okay,
memorable.
I will do that.
Yeah.
But I could have been more limited in the animation if I wanted to.
Yeah,
But both Penn and Rebecca really wanted me to just do the thing I do. This is why they wanted me to do it. But it's mostly about how the character is drawn, how the joints are moving a little bit.
But then, how do you think about the joints when it's just such like an abstract kind of character?
Yeah, I just basically, horses, right?
I guess you had a lot of practice with that.
Yeah, I have a lot of practice with horses. So real horses, right? Their elbows are up higher next to the body, and their wrist joints are actually halfway down their front legs. And but this guy isn't a real horse, so I was like, okay, he's gonna have slightly more of a human or even more dog-like structure to his front legs.
So, are you still like
No.
kind of considering structure in your head?
Oh
even?
yeah, sure,
Okay.
yeah. But like, just making those choices about like what would look good with his design and what Penn had originally drawn, because Penn gave me that one drawing, sort of on a napkin with just like these human arms, or like wrist, elbow thing, right? So
Yeah.
should I, but his elbow is still a little bit higher than a human's would be, right? It's more of where kind of a cat would be.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a mixture between, but it's definitely from experience.
I heard the
Yeah,
request
yeah.
for James Baxter as like a character was from a CalArts lecture.
Yes, it
like,
was.
Some kid was like giving you
It
the
was Penn.
hardest. Oh, it was Penn.
It was
giving
Penn, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was Penn who yelled out, "Do a horse balancing on a ball."
That's crazy. Dang.
But yeah, everything else. I mean, there might be some more subtleties that I would do if I was doing spirit doing this. There'd be a little bit more attention to certain things, like the tilt of the hips, like when the foot contacts the ground, that the hips are going to do this and then that, and then this and then that. There's going to be that in there. He doesn't have that. He's just a ball.
But then, how do you communicate? Like,
But then,
yeah.
but so that's not communicated. It's not in there. His hips are not tilting really.
Then how do you communicate? He's like how do you still like kind of get that illusion of like
But the
he's moving across the screen without like those kinds of like
yeah,
subtleties?
but the pattern of the trot is very much the same, right? He still has to get onto a diagonal pair pattern. So I have him bring his, most horse locomotion happens sort of back first, working its way to the front of the body. So, he picks up a back foot, and then it replaces where his front foot was. That's a standard walk pattern. Animals tend to walk. They'll do one side of their body, and then they'll do the other side of their body. They'll do back, front, back, front, back, front. And when they're walking at pace, it feels like it's just a rocker that's going back, front, back, front, back, front. But when they slow down, you get to actually see that that's how they're doing it. That they are doing back, front, and then there'll be a little gap in the rhythm, and then back, front, on the other side of the body. So it's a standard walk pattern just to get into the diagonals. So now I've got two diagonals here, back, back right, front left, and now I can go bounce into a trot, so take off, and then I can land back right, front left. So now I'm in diagonal pairs, which is a trot, and both the hips and the shoulders do the same thing. They just bounce together, unlike a gallop or a walk, which is like. By the way, the design of James Baxter the horse also comes from Spirit. Because it was and I was explaining this in a lecture at CalArts, it was my shorthand for drawing spirit, when I was posing him out, would be to draw a ball for the back and a ball for the front, and a neck with a head on it, and then just sticks for legs. Like that Rafiki shot. That was my first run through of a spirit shot. Was usually that. It was like, what are the hips doing? What's the chest doing? Where's the head? And what are these like? You know.
Yeah.
So I could do it really fast. It was just like, what's going up? What's going down? Are they together? Are they apart? So that was my shorthand for him. So he took my shorthand for spirit and he turned it into a cartoon character. No, we're just going to keep the balls. We're not going to put any anatomy on it. We're just going to keep that.
Oh my
You know.
God.
So yeah, then that. So yeah, you're just in diagonal pairs. So I think probably what I did was, yeah, I probably did that first down position right here. Then I imagine I did a series of down positions, and then just worked in between them.
Was that probably was a nice change of pace, just having your shorthand be the character design and not having to enable the drawing over and over again?
Yeah, well, he's certainly
It's so simple.
quicker to draw than Spirit is.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Um,
He's so pure.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I love this episode.
yeah, it's fun.
It's really good.
I like it too. Kendra did all the cleanup drawings for me.
Wow.
Did they? Didn't they show the roughs at the end, or am I like
I think
misremembering?
they did, yeah. Part over the credits.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, but this is actually Kendra's drawing right there.
And these were all on paper.
Yeah, this is all
Oh,
on
that's
paper.
cool.
It's on 12
That's
field.
inc-
On 12 field paper.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I feel like you already kind of went over this in the beginning, so we don't have to spend too long on it. But I guess it was kind of what you were covering in the beginning with technical knowledge and balancing that with the character acting, how they hold themselves.
Mhm.
I mean, like there's a scene from Prince of Egypt where it's Moses and
Mm.
I forgot how to pronounce her name.
Tzipporah. Yeah.
Where
Oh,
you know
yeah.
there's obviously so much technical aspects, but you're really just capturing an emotion, and also so silently. You're not relying on dialogue or anything. I guess you covered it a little bit, but just like how do you balance those technical things so it doesn't feel stiff with the real thing that makes like animation special is the emotion, the acting, the character.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd been animating long enough at this point. What was this, 1991, 92? No, 96, 97.
Whoa.
This is this is 96. So I've been animating for 10 years at this point. And yeah, this is very much a combination. This is exactly that thought process I was describing, where my first thoughts are, how am I going to communicate these ideas that I want him to communicate? And what are those ideas? He's going to come in really excited. He's going to do the thing where he like twirls her around just because he's so excited. And then she's going to go like, what? And he's going to go, you'll never guess. And you know, I was out there. And it's like, so it's a series of poses to communicate certain things. Like she's a bit rattled here, so she's kind of off balance. And then it's like he is, yeah, let me tell you, like this thing just happened to me, it's crazy. And then you can see my blue first scribble actually underneath some of this stuff. And then she goes, what? What are you on? And then this is more like, you'll never guess. It was incredible. You know, so he's basically trying to describe the burning bush, and he's like, you know, this thing came inside me, and it was like, yeah, and I had to take off my shoes, and then I was like floating in the air, and then like, you know, and then my staff, yeah, I had to take my staff. So it's just a series of imaginary bits of dialogue or thoughts, you know, that I wanted to try and convey, and like, how am I going to pose that out? But in answer to your question, in posing it out, I'm already doing that thing of doing a pose, but it's not in isolation. I'm thinking about the action while I'm doing the poses. So they're not just storytelling, but I'm not just storyboarding while I'm doing this.
Right.
I'm animating. So I'm thinking of how to move between these things and how am I going to communicate that with motion, you know, as they come apart how's her body going to bend so that when their arms get straight, then she's going to, all of these mechanical things that layer on top of the emotional part of it. Like the emotional part is the first idea, and then the mechanical part is the second idea. And they just kind of like play off each other for a while.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if I can explain that any better.
No,
And I suppose the third idea is presenting that clearly to an audience. At the same time.
Wow.
Great.
But again, as fewer drawings as I can get away with
Yeah.
at this stage. Yeah.
Try to be as limited as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fun shot to do. It's the only shot I've ever been given that didn't have a time limit on it.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, you know what has to happen. Animate. I mean, most shots you get is like, this shot is 10 feet, 4 frames. And if you want to change it, you've got to say I need more frames.
Yeah.
But this was like, no, we think it's about 30 feet. I don't know.
Oh my
Just
God.
animate something and we'll see how it feels.
Awesome.
That was kind of nice. I've never had a shot like that.
Yeah. So you could have worked on this for like a year and just been like,
I know, I couldn't really, you could get really carried away and just keep
just
going,
kept going.
but you have to,
Just make a whole new
How
short
long
film.
did you spend
Some
on
kind
the
of-
shot?
I don't remember. I mean, how long is that? Right.
7, 6, 7.
7, 6, 7. I
Okay.
can't
Wow.
do that math in my head.
Not a good one.
It's okay.
Yeah, but it's a good while.
Mm.
It's about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's about a 30-second shot. I'm more used to dealing in seconds now than I was before, but I was always like thinking in feet instead of seconds for most of my career.
Is feet just like is feet like in terms of film?
Yeah, it's literally a foot of film. It's like if you measure a piece of film, 16 frames are in a foot. Standard,
Oh.
standard 35 millimeter film. You get 16 frames for every foot.
And did that
Which
come
is
out-
why they measured feet. Because in the very old days, an editor would go, like in Charlie Chaplin or something, Charlie would go, give me another couple of feet. And the editor would go, okay. He had a ruler on his bench, and he was just like, 1, 2, 3, okay, cut.
Yeah.
So they would talk about film in terms of feet.
And that language still kind of carried over.
It
even
carried into animation.
digital.
Yeah, it carried into
Yeah.
animation, so feet and frames with its Disney standard.
Do
and then-
people still like talk in feet nowadays, or is it mostly in
It's
seconds?
mostly in seconds. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you still, I think Disney might still classify their films in feet.
I
I'm not
know
sure.
our animation teacher, Robert Domingo. I don't
Yeah.
think you-
Yeah, I'm
he
around.
always is
He
like,
always talks
you
about
gotta do
feet.
this many feet
Yeah.
of film a week if you want to get your film done.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, but he worked out with me on DreamWorks and on Enchanted together, and yeah, he's great.
Great.
love Robert. Shout out Robert.
Yeah.
Shout out to
Yeah,
Robert.
Robert.
Yeah.
We're also curious about your opinion between what is good animation versus what is great animation.
Good animation versus great animation. Well, I think, like I said before, anything that fulfills on its promise, that really does what it intends to do, I think can be pretty great. And personally, I don't feel like, sorry, I just touched my mic, it's probably an awful sound. Personally, I don't feel like there's a specific style or level of finesse that one has to have in order to make something great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think something can be great if it's super limited. It can also be great if it's like grotesque or like ugly or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
as long as that's what it's trying to do and it's
Exactly.
doing it brilliantly,
Right.
then that's what I consider great, I think. I think if you're in a realm like you're in Prince of Egypt or you're on Lion King, where the style is very set, and everybody knows that this is a Disney movie and it has to be animated to a certain level of believability in that Disney style, organic, believable, not super cartoony, but not hyper real. It's like in this caricatured reality. Everyone knows what that looks like or what it should look like. So if you're unable to do that, then you can go, yeah, that's not good. It's like, that's clunky. That's awkward. That's stiff. That's not communicating. It's badly drawn. You can classify it or grade it, I suppose, but only because you know exactly what that style and standard really is.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's a combination of intention and executing.
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
intention.
Yeah, absolutely.
As
Yeah,
long as
because
it's,
there's some super simple things which I really love. They're great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you've talked about like Western animations influenced you, Richard Williams, Disney, Bugs Bunny, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I'm interested because I feel like it's something I don't hear often from animators in the West, but is influence from like Japan and even it's in the West, but France,
Yep.
or I guess old Soviet animation. Is there any of that influences you, like any
Yeah,
anime?
I think more so lately, for sure. And if I was going to boil it down to one sentence, it would be like, stop animating so much.
Touch grass.
In what I get out of anime, especially, is that they're so direct and so clear with their storytelling, and the way that they pose characters and the economy of it. And they're not constantly trying to set off animation fireworks all over the place. There's moments, right, where they want to go and they want to do something that's really dynamic and like some fight scene or chase or whatever it is, where they pull out all the stops and they go crazy. But for most of the way that it's shot and the way that it's animated, it's just moving simply between well-crafted poses, and no one's doing crazy secondary actions or gestures, and no one's gonna...
Yeah.
no one's doing that.
Yeah.
And it tells the story so beautifully. It's just like, just settle down and tell the story.
Exactly.
So I have gotten a lot out of that, especially over the last few years. And I think about that now, if I work on a feature film, it's like, am I just doing the story justice, or am I trying to show off? Am I?
Right.
What's really the best thing for this shot in this moment? And it could be standing still and not doing a damn thing.
Not like.
As long as the
moving around and
pose
stuff.
is correct and you're communicating the moment to the audience,
Yeah.
So that's
Exactly.
the most what I get out of anime, or the anime style. And they are kind of different, like anime style tends to, there's usually more detail on the characters when they're drawn, and that kind of pushes the balance. It's like, oh, there's that much detail, we probably aren't going to do that many drawings, right? So they tend to be more on like 3s and sometimes 4s.
Yeah, I think from what I know from the anime pipeline, because there's so much focus on the design, I feel like there's a lot more focus on having it's very economical. So I think they deal a lot more with having just good keys and good drawings over getting the movement. So if you look at a lot of the pipeline, it's a lot of draw this, correction, draw this, correction, draw this, correction, move on, draw this, correction, move on, move on.
Yeah, exactly. So
It's very economical.
yeah, I mean, but yeah, the economy comes from the drawing count.
Yeah.
So they don't burden themselves with having to animate, things on ones a lot of the time. There's occasionally they do, but most of the time, no. And yeah, I mean, often there aren't slow-ins or anything. It's just there'll just be a series of straight in-betweens.
But they still communicate the ideas very well.
Oh, yeah,
I think. Yeah.
absolutely. And the great thing is once you're inside of that style and you're experiencing it as a film, it all makes sense. It doesn't feel jerky. It doesn't feel limited even. Because you're in that world, and so having set that sort of baseline. This is how the world moves here. This is how things are drawn here. It's everything feels right that way. Yeah.
That's something I've also even noticed in Japanese animation, in kind of a different approach it seems to animating scene, which I'm not sure if you've noticed, but it's I feel like you can, with a lot of Western animation, there's that kind of classic Milt Kali thing where it's you can kind of see the keys. It kind of goes into this, and you can kind of tell which drawings he did first.
Yeah.
But for example, I was watching Ponyo, and there's a scene where Ponyo is swimming through the water, and there's never a moment where I'm I can point out a key. I'm just it just keeps moving, and it doesn't feel like it's slowing in or out. It just keeps going, and I wonder if maybe that's something you ever notice when you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I see it in Western animation too, though. I mean, I see that shots where it's like it's not like spot the key.
Yeah.
And often in the more action-oriented stuff, I try and do that too. I know what you mean about the milk hall stuff. It's like, especially his later work, does become stylistically mannered, and he has a specific style of movement that kind of translates to different characters, and it's not particularly unique to a single character. He gets away with it because he's such a masterful draftsman, and the ideas are so strong, and he is so good at the mechanics of moving between these poses that you don't feel that spot the key as much as you would in a lesser animator's hands. But yeah, I know totally what you mean. But I think that's something you see in both Western and you know, and anime style, especially in action shots.
Yeah.
I just have a very improvised question. So when I was doing a intro for a kind of narrative animation that a film that I was doing, and then the intro is straight ahead with abstract shape moving around. And then I handed to my sister, who's a composer, and let her compose based on that. And then I was very surprised by what she came up, which is a really beautiful melody that matched perfectly with the animation. It feels like she composed the music first, and then I draw on it. And then I realized, how did you do that? And she said that there's a certain rhythm in the animation. Even though it's abstract, they're still moving in a rhythmic way. Once I capture the rhythm and almost at the groove of movement, I'm able to bring melody to it. I'm wondering, when I'm seeing all of your animation, I've been seeing this rhythm of movement, and then this almost like really a little sentimental, but this feelings of breathe in all of these animations, in all of these characters. I'm wondering, what's your perception, or how would you describe the feeling of rhythm in animations?
Yeah, I think, like I said at the beginning, the art of moving things around was one of the things that came quicker to me than, say, how to draw cartoon characters or how to do complicated bits of acting or something like that. So, and kinetic things interest me visually anyway. I think I'm a very kinetically perceptive person. I'm better at actually recognizing people from their walk from a distance sometimes than I are close up looking at their face. Not better, but maybe just as good. I don't have face blindness, but it's like I'm not. That's not my strongest suit. I'm actually very good at looking at movement and understanding what's happening. And so if I can see something move enough times, I can probably animate it.
Would you say that's just like a natural inclination you have, or
Yeah,
would
I
you say
think
that's
so.
from just animating so
I
much?
think it's just something that I think we all have, skills, and I think that's just the way my brain works. I'm rather good at perceiving motion and understanding it and recreating it.
Yeah.
And I've always been interested in dance and ballet and stuff like that, and so I think my natural, sort of love of motion wants me to move things in a lyrical fashion, a sort of lyrical, rhythmic, musical fashion. Because I like how things move. I like it. And so like moving things around in a rhythmic and sort of musical way feels how I want to express myself. So yeah, it seems pretty natural to me that your sister would be able to compose music to a piece of animation. I hope someone could take a piece of my animation and do that to it, and that I didn't have. I could do the animation first and they could match it with music. I hope that would work. But also, like I said, they're both temporal arts, right? They both exist in fixed time. So yeah, they're very. I think music and animation are very closely related in terms of how the artist approaches them.
Do you have have a clip recommended for my sister to make music out of it?
No, she can take whatever she wants. If she wants to give it a shot, just like take a piece of my animation and try
Okay, I'll
try
let her
composing
do
to it.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. But it is, I think, one of the reasons why music and animation have had such a close relationship over the 100 or so years. And some of the best, most effective, rewatchable bits of animation have been to music. It's actually why I think it's something we've lost a little bit of is the role of the composer in the making of an animated film and how early you bring them on has obviously changed a lot in feature film where it's treated just like live action, where a composer will come along as an afterthought almost. Not with musicals in terms of songs, but with the score, yeah, they just come in at the end and they do it. It's very different than, say, how Bambi was made in like 1939, 1940, whatever it was. Frank Churchill was in the studio, and they were planning out the beats of motion on Bambi on bar sheets, which were like bar sheets are like horizontal exposure sheets, where they're trying to plan out actions on rhythm. So if you watch the Bambi in the snow sequence, when it comes out in the snow and they go on the ice rink and stuff like that, it's like a ballet. It's like every piece of that score is physical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, it's woven together in this way because Churchill is actually composing during story and animation. They're doing it together. Never happens anymore.
It has that sort of Peter and
Should,
Wolf.
never does. Yeah, exactly. Has
Yeah.
that Peter and Wolf thing. I mean, Peter and Wolf is obviously, that's Prokofiev's music, totally done before, and you're animating to it. But it's a similar kind of thing. You're working together, music and animation are working together, sort of bouncing off each other.
You're thinking about which instrument is what character, how
Thinking
that
about
correlates
that,
in the story.
You're
Yeah.
trying to do bits of action on rhythm so that the composer can fit to it, and then the composer will do a sketch musically, and then you'll actually animate to that. So there's this sort of back and forth that happens, which I think is so gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
We feel that.
Yeah.
So
Sorry,
sorry.
geeky side note. That's why there's a term in old Disney called music room, which is a music room shot is a shot that doesn't have any character animation in it. It's just a shot of the rain or a shot of whatever. But it's a shot that never went to character animation. And it's called music room because Frank Churchill and his piano sat in a room and they used to store the artwork for those shots in that room. So instead of the artwork, those backgrounds or something going into character animation, they would just store them in the music room until they were ready to go to background painting. Yeah, so that's a music room shot.
So
Got it.
Okay.
Oh,
Good to know. Yeah. Okay.
awesome.
Sorry, but just to wrap things up, I guess as because I'm a first year, I think, versus everybody else here, I'm still very much getting into kind of learning more about hand-drawn animation. But if for people like me or for people like everybody else here or for just anybody who wants to just get into hand-drawn animation in general, do you have any advice you'd want to share to them at this time?
Let's see. Well, obviously, it's a bit of a duh, but work on your craft. It is, in fact, it's tough in some ways because you wonder what the future of hand-drawn animation is going to be.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I get that. But also, it's so much easier for you as a student, as an artist, to engage with hand-drawn animation than it's ever been in the past. Because you can basically just sit in your bedroom and do it by yourself on a tablet.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So that degree of ease, intro into the art form, I think in many ways balances out the uncertainty of its future because so many people will love it, you guys, and want to do it, and should do it. And I'm hoping you guys do amazing work, and it still remains a really viable art form that people want to see. And the saving grace of it, I think, is that you've got you don't need anything other than your just own desire, and enough money to buy a tablet to do it, right? And you can so much more resources either online or in places like this to teach you how to do it than there ever was before. Back in my day, it was like there was a handful of books and you couldn't conceive of making a film on your own because it demanded so much equipment.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's encouraging, I think. But yeah, it's working on your craft. It's just putting in the time to work on your skills and your drawing and your filmmaking skills, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely makes me glad that I think, even though I feel like CalArts like isn't as like animation focused as it was back in the day, I just feel like it's nice that you get to do like multiple films every single year, because then you can like you draw more, you like think about like moving things more, you think about constructing like stories like that.
I'm usually more interested in the students that didn't get to finish their films.
Really?
Yeah. Because it usually means that they're an animator. Yeah, the ones that get to finish their films are like viz dev artists and directors.
Yeah.
And maybe story artists.
Yeah.
Animators don't get to finish their films because they're too eager to animate them.
Right.
And I love that. So I'm actually usually at portfolio day, I'm usually trying to seek out the ones that only managed to do a few tests, but they were really good. And it's like, oh yeah, they're an animator.
Yeah.
You're
I
kind
remember
of describing me right
I remember I was like showing one of my classmates. I was like, you will not believe what I just animated today. Look at this cool shot I did. And I was like showing them my rough animation. He's like, have you worked on any of your backgrounds yet?
No.
But
that's okay. Someone else can do that.
yeah.
No, I was just like that. I was just like, I want to figure out how this works. And I just did that all the time.
I want to see things move. I want to like see things like come to life.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to like paint all day.
Well, that's the thing I think attracted me as much as anything, because I grew up wanting to do visual effects and stuff like that, but animation, it seems a little like a magic trick, in that.
Yeah.
And especially hand-drawn animation seems like a magic trick.
Absolutely.
Because it's so surprising that it lives.
Yeah.
Right? It's like CG, the more real CG looks, the less surprising it is that it moves.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's
like,
you see that every day.
It becomes like, oh yeah, of course it moves around. It looks like I could touch it.
Yeah.
Big deal. I mean, it's hard to do, but it's like, big deal. But when you see like a thing that your brain is telling you is not real, your brain is telling you on one side, it's going like, no wait, that's a drawing, that's a picture, that's a painting, but it's living. It's a bigger leap. It's a bigger leap for your brain to make, and it's a leap that is very satisfying when it does make that leap and go.
Yeah.
It's more magical.
I think
to me.
there was a moment when I was a kid where I could know that like Mowgli in the Jungle Book was a drawing, but I didn't really think of him. I was just like, oh, that's Mowgli.
Right.
I wasn't thinking of him as like a drawing. I was just like, I completely was just believing that it was a person.
Right, and I think your brain gets transported further because it has to go to a more imaginary place to do that work.
I think Rebecca. I have a copy of Rebecca Sugar's art book where she was talking about like kind of like her relationship to cartoons, and she was talking about like how like I guess when you're falling in love with cartoons and you're like getting attached to cartoons, you're kind of you're like falling for their kind of magic trick. You're like becoming emotionally invested in something that like tricked you into being like into thinking it's real. So you're kind of falling in love with your own like ability to be fooled by like the imaginary. And I thought it was a very romantic way to put it.
Yeah. But I think she's absolutely right. I think at its core, I think that's what it is.
It's very romantic. It's very romantic. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. It is. It is. That's absolutely what it is.
I get our romance in the school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, so now I'm curious to just ask in general, like, what are your hopes for the future of 2D animation?
I mean, I really hope that like yourself, will keep it going, not only sort of in the sort of TV space, but also in the feature space. And that I don't ever expect it to be the go-to technique, like the norm for feature film, as it was, say, in the 70s or 80s. But I would like it to at least have its place, its sort of niche, I suppose, in the way that stop motion also does. It's like because it's going to feel different when you watch it.
Yeah.
Even if it's the same story, it's just going to feel different when you watch it be hand drawn than if you watch it be CG. In exactly the same way that it feels different when it's stop motion. When you watch it,
Yeah.
it's a different feeling that you get by watching it. So I'm hopeful that it's going to find that. It's going to settle down and find that place where it's a special thing. In some ways, I actually kind of like enjoy the fact that it might be a very special thing, and that not everything is done that way. So that when something is done that way and it's beautiful,
It feels
it's special,
really
and it's just
special.
like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
look at this little
Definitely.
jewel, you know, that's so
Absolutely.
special.
Yeah.
Because you know, back I suppose in the 70s or 80s, there wasn't like 100 films released a year. You know, like 50, 60 animated films released a year. There was only like 2 or 3. Right? So it was a special event. So yeah, I'd still like it to feel like a special thing. Yeah. I don't see why that can't happen. It's cheaper to produce than CG is.
Yeah. I mean,
Keep
for my
telling
guys-
people that. keep telling people that, because that's a bit of a lie in the industry that the executives have told themselves.
It's more
That it's
expensive.
like,
Yeah.
oh, hand drawn is so expensive. No, it's cheaper. It's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
You only have to look at the list of credits to figure that out.
Oh,
See
yeah.
how many people it takes to make one of these big CG movies. Like,
Yeah.
It's like,
That's
oh,
expensive.
well, that's a lot.
I'm
Yeah.
hearing that too. Maybe hand drawn could use the feelings to replace the visual that's sophisticated. So a more sophisticated feeling than a more sophisticated visuals might be.
oh, like tackling different stories and different ways of filmmaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see that. Yeah. You know, you see that every now and then. You get like different people come along and do something interesting in terms of writing or filmmaking. You know, I don't know, like I Lost My Body or something, where you see a filmmaker come along and take animation to a different place in terms of how they tell a story. Definitely want to see more of that. You know, but obviously that stuff is going to be probably more on the independent side. You know, because it's not the big family movie that
Yeah.
everyone wants to
Yeah.
see, you know, or the studios want to produce, you know, like get absolutely everyone in the movie theater. But those are the films actually that attract me the most. I think that ones that have a different voice. It's one of the reasons I like Cartoon Saloon,
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I love Cartoon
Oh my
Saloon.
gosh, yeah.
because they have just a
Yes.
different filmmaking voice.
Yeah, and it really feels like a treat anytime they release
Yeah.
something.
Right?
It's just like,
Ooh,
wow.
something new.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
work is always
talking
beautiful.
about Cartoon Saloon, I'm going to wrap it up by asking you what are some of your favorite animations, animator, and animated films?
Some of my favorite animations. All right, so yeah, that's a long list, I guess. I mean, on the Disney side of things, you know, I'm a big fan of Milt Kahl's work. He is someone who I still look up to as just like, I don't know how he was that good at that. There's parts of his work which just floors me at how good it is. But yeah, there's other parts of like that Disney canon which I feel like I love Ward Kimball's work. I love Eric Goldberg's work hugely. But then yeah, on the just what I like to see filmmaking wise, yeah, I really do like Wolfwalkers. I thought it was a beautiful film.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I love that stuff. It's really great. Yeah, I don't know. Anything that feels like it has something to say.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I really like what was the anime that we really liked a couple of years ago with the chair?
Oh my god, wait, the Makoto
So-
Shinkai one? Or is it something different?
The one where he turns into a chair.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Suzume?
Susan?
Suzume.
Suzume.
Thank you. I loved that movie. I thought that was great. Such a great movie.
Oh gosh.
With a chair.
Chair.
Gio was like, oh,
Yeah.
It's really good.
I need to watch that.
yeah.
Did you hate that movie?
No, I thought it was good.
Okay. you feel free. I mean,
It certainly is a concept.
It's
yeah, no, but I just thought it was really inventive and interesting.
Yeah.
They did.
I'm wondering, besides animation, what are some of your interests that's in life in general?
We're just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like film outside of animation. Obviously, always have been
Okay.
big
Instead
fan
of
of film.
movie
Always have
images.
been. But I'm interested also, I suppose, in like sciencey things. Yeah, I like evolutionary biology a lot. I read about that.
I think that also
Animals,
kind of
love
informs
animals.
animation.
Read about animals a
Yeah.
lot.
Animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my phone case has dinosaurs on it.
Ooh, wait.
In different poses. That.
Different dinosaurs.
Yeah, just dinosaurs.
Different dinosaurs.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, I think if, sometimes people ask me what would I be if I wasn't an animator, and I sometimes cheekily say, I want to be a paleontologist. I want to go dig up dinosaurs.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I would want to do.
Got it.
Dang.
The STEM kid to artist pipeline. I understand that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I understand that.
But
That's how it would be.
and it's sort of like some of the things I've done in animation have kind of like led me back into it a little bit. Like the anatomy stuff I was doing on Spirit, like led me back into that. And I got at least one friend in that world that I talked to about animal things.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this
Yeah.
amazing
Thank you for having me. This has
conversation.
been very nice. I really appreciate it, and it's been an honor
Yeah.
talking to you guys today.
Thank you for watching.